some new tax changes in 2022-23 for the sole trader. And today we are continuing with the changes for the company. And also there is no changes for the corporation tax. So today we are going to focus on the payroll and the dividend and some changes and tax planning for this tax year. And please stay in mute to make sure that the session won't be interrupted. And if you have any questions during the webinar, welcome to use the Q&A facility. So we could, I will go through it one by one. I will share my screen now. Okay. So let's go through what is the key changes in payroll for this very tax year. So the first thing is the government introduced the Health and Social Care Levy, and it will affect, it introduced from last tax year actually, and it will really launched by next tax year, but there are some time frame will be in fact. I will talk more in details later. And the one of the most changes, of course, is the NI threshold and the NI contribution, the rate and the threshold, etc., etc. And the NI national insurance for the Freeport Business has been introduced this year. Previously, there's no insurance, national insurance applicable. And employer allowance, luckily, the good news is increased. And also increased in the national living wage rate and the statutory pay. Most famous one is the maternity pay, etc., etc. I will go through it one by one later on. And what's not changes is income tax rates. For this year, no changes. Corporation tax, no changes, but from next year, it will be changed. So we will cover this by the end of this tax year. Tax code, no changes because there's no changes for personal allowance. And the automatic enrollment contribution rate, no changes at all. So yeah, let's go through it one by one. So first is what's new for the NI contribution for 2022-23. I categorize this into three time frame. The first one is from 6th of April 2022. The employer allowance increased to 5,000. And the Fund Social Care of the government introduced a 1.25% increase. That means the NI contribution increased by 1.25%. And from 6th of July 2022, so I would like to highlight in here about the time. The employee primary NI contribution threshold increased to exactly like personal allowance from this tax year, but only applicable from 6th of July 2022. It is very important because it might affect your tax planning, especially if you are one-person company. You are the director and an employee, and you're the only person in the company. It will affect you. So yeah, this is the second timeline. And the third one is actually start from the next tax year, but it will increase in the NI rate will be replaced. This 1.25% increase will be removed, but replaced by a new healthy and social care levy. That is exactly what I'm saying previously. So I will tell you what on earth happened in here and how it affects you. And please be aware that this increase does not apply to Class 2 NI and Class 3 NI. So first thing first, the Health and Social Care Levy. So there is a table I put it in here to help you understand how the NI changes from last year, this current year, and what's going to happen next tax year. So as you can see from the table, the 2021-22, please ignore the current because it's old table. The previous tax year, 2021-22, the NI rate is still 12%, and if you are in the higher rate band, it will be further 2% in there. But for this year, it temporarily increased 1.25% from each category. So it's the same thing for the self-employed, so you can compare in here. But however, from next year, 2022-24, 23-24, the NI contribution will go down back to 12% and 2% if you are in the different threshold. However, this 1.25 increase will be replaced by another one called Health and Social Care Levy. So what it is? What is it? So the government announced in its paper named Building Back Better, Our Plan for the Health and Social Care. It is a plan for funding the NHS and social care sector. The levy will be 1.25% tax on earning for employees, self-employed, and employers. It will tax earning in the same way as national contribution, except that it will also apply to the earning of those over state pension age. Means that if you are at the age of retirement and you are entitled with the your age is over the state pension age, it will come to force in the tax year starting in April and 2023. But the people whose age is over the state pension age need to pay this levy as well. Is 1.25%. The rest of the people, actually, there's no too much difference of this tax year or next tax year. But again, if you are the people who have already retired and your age is over the state pension age, you will be effect from next year, April. So yeah, this is the first one. The next one is the NI threshold has been increased. You all know that the percentage is 1.25%, but what exactly the number you will face to? I list an example in here, and I think it might including all the people as an example for startups or SME. So the first is the person who do not want to pay, who just want the annual salary exactly match the personal allowance. Means that this person do not want to pay the income tax. So in this case, you can see compare with last year. So for this year, the employee pension it decreased. Why? It is because from July, the 6th of July, the employee primary threshold has increased to same as the personal allowance. So this total are coming from where? Are coming from the first 4 months, first 3 months of the tax year, because the previous because the threshold hasn't been increased. However, you can see the employer contributions above. Employer contribution is still increased. Why? Because it is only increased the primary threshold, but the employer will be affected by the secondary threshold, which has no changes. So you still need to pay 522 employer contribution if you take the salary of 12,570, even though there's no income tax liability for you, but the NI contribution is still increased by £7. Okay, this is for the person who take the salary exactly match the personal allowance. And the second one is the person who want to use up the maximum of the basic rate. Means that the salary under or exactly equals to 50,270 per year, they are still fitting into the basic rate band. But how much is the NI contribution increased? For this person, the NI contribution for the year increased for employee NI contribution is 468, and for the employer is 479. All in total is like 947. Yeah, almost 950. So if you are a higher rate taxpayer, let's assume your tax rate is 40%. Let's assume that you take 75,000 as your annual salary. So you can tell in here the employee national insurance contribution increased by 777, and the employer increased by 788. Means that your NI contribution payment liability increased by 50 hundreds. So yeah, that I hope this three battery can help you understand further about how the pension increase affect you, no matter which band you are filling with. And the Freeport business, there, as you can see from the table, if you are a Freeport business, it won't the national insurance contribution won't affect you from until last year. But from this tax year, if you have an employee whose payment is over 2,000, annual salary is over 25,000, you will face the national insurance contribution charge. So that is a big change for the Freeport business. The employer national insurance contribution allowance. So what is this allowance? A lot of people in the business ignore this part. So the employer national insurance contribution allowance is an allowance given the qualifying employer to offset against their annual employer national insurance liability. However, it is not a repayable credit. For example, for this year, the employer NIC allowance is 5,000. If you NIC liability is only 3,000, the unused 2,000 cannot be repaid to your account as a credit. Means that you have to, if you haven't used it, that's it. And also, this allowance is not applicable with under two conditions. The first is if you're a company with only one employee being paid above the Class 1 NIC secondary threshold, means that you start to trigger the employer national insurance contribution. And at the same time, the employee is also a director of the company, you cannot use this allowance. So it means that if you have one more further employee, you can use this allowance. Otherwise, you can't. Or a lot of people ask me, if I'm a director who do not take salary from a company, but I have an employee, only one person, can I use this allowance? The answer is yes. The second one is if you're a public body or the business doing more than half of your work in the public sector, for example, your local council or the NHS service, or you're dealing half of your business with this public sector, you cannot claim this NIC allowance as well. The charity are not affected by this rule. So as you can see from the table, you can see this allowance increase each year by 1,000. Actually, I haven't listed in here. Previously, it's 2,000, increased to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. I hope next year will be 6,000. We will see. National minimum wage. This is something I can say it's a good news. It's increased as well. From previous year, the minimum wage for age over 23, I think most of our people in today's webinar are age over 23. The hourly rate is £8.91. And for this year, it's £9.50. And if you are an internship or the young children who just graduate from the university, your minimum wage is increased from £8.36 to £9.18. And if you have any children in your house who take the part-time job outside, for example, do work in the Starbucks, etc., and they might need to be aware that the minimum page is increased from 656 to 683. This is not increased that much compared with the previous two, right? And in other case, under 18 or 19, you can see there's also changes as well. It increased by 20p or 50p of the hourly rates. Yeah, if you are within this case, you can have a look. So the next one is the statutory payments. The most famous three is the maternity pay, paternity pay, adoption pay, or sick pay, etc., etc. Partially of these rules changes. Let's see the maternity pay as an example. You can maximum take 39 weeks as the maternity leave, as your maternity leave, and in the first 6 weeks, you can get 90% of your employee average weekly earning. It hasn't been changed compared with last tax year. However, if you plan to take the remaining 33 weeks, and you can get the money you can get weekly from the government has increased by literally £5. Yeah, I can say. Yeah, it's actually you can take the money from the government of 156.66 weekly, or 90% of the employee average weekly earnings, whichever is lower. However, I haven't come across with a situation which the 90% of the weekly average earning is less than 156.66. So most of my cases, my clients take the 146.66 pounds from the government. So yeah, the good news is increased almost £5 per week. The same thing happened for the paternity pay and adoption pay as well. So yeah, it's the same rate. So yeah, talking about the what changes, let's go through what's not changes, even though it's not changes, but I would like to go through it one by one with you, just to remind you what's the exactly figure it is. So personal allowance, no changes, still 12,570. And basic rate, boundary, no changes, is still 37,700 pounds. Higher rate, 40% for the earning between 37,700 and 701 to 150,000. And if you're earning above 150,000, you're falling into the additional tax rate. It's 45%. And because the personal allowance haven't been changed, so the tax code hasn't been changed as well. A lot of my clients ask me, especially the person who earning above 100,000 every year, even if they are the company's employee, because they need to report the self-assessments. So they becomes my client, and they always ask me, "Oh, why am I tax code changed?" It is because once your salary is above 100,000, your personal allowance start to deduct. Once your personal allowance changes, your tax code changes. So that is the reason why sometimes people's tax code changes. So if you have the same question, that is the answer. Pension. This is the automatic enrollment. There's no changes. You are automatically enrolled into the employer pension when you earning triggers the qualified earning threshold, which is 10,000 annually. So if your salary is above 10,000 annually, so you can you trigger the automatic enrollments into your employer's pension scheme. So the rate hasn't been changed. So the 5% of your salary is your employee contribution, including £1% tax relief, and your employer will contribute 3% into your pension pot. So yeah, that is the pension contribution rate hasn't been changed. So talking about all these rules, let's back to the practical cases to see how the tax planning for the salary and dividend. Actually, this case is mainly focused on the one person's company. not suitable if you are employee, because you cannot control how much salary and planning you've got, right? So so let's see, go through from the employee national contribution, national insurance contribution. So you can see I still categorize this into 3 time frame. So the first one is the 6th April 2022 to 5th of July 2022. This is very important because during this time, the primary threshold hasn't been increased. It still remains to £9,880 per year. So including this figure, if you take the monthly salary 823 per month or the annual salary 9,880, you do not need to pay any employee NI. However, from 6th of July 2022 to 5th of April 2023, your monthly salary can increase to 1,048, and your annual salary can increase to 12,570 per year. You do not entitle with any employee NI contribution. So, however, if you have the weighted average of these 2 different time frame, so for the whole tax year 2022-23, if you take the annual salary of 11,908 per year, you do not need to pay any employee national insurance contribution. So if you're a one-person company, you could consider about this basic salary for your tax planning. However, don't forget about the employer NI contribution. So the when you salary is over the second threshold, you trigger the employer NI contribution. So how much is it? So it's 175 per week, 758 per month, and 9,100 per year. So if your salary is above this 9,100, you need to pay the employer NI contribution, which rate is 50.05%. So I would like to highlight in here, if you are a one-person company, you are the employee and the director as well, because you are not entitled with any employer national contribution allowance. So the best planning and most tax efficiency planning for you might be if you do not want to pay any NI contribution. So you can take the £9,100 plus dividend, because the dividend rate, even though it's increased, I would like to recall this rate from last week, even though it is increased to 8.75% in this tax year, it's still very, tax efficiency way to help you to save more tax. This is a very great planning. However, if you would like to avoid the employee national contribution, you can take 11,908. But I would like to remind you in here, above 9,100, but under 11,908, you need to pay employer NI contribution, which rate is at 50.05%. And yeah, this is basically for the bespoke tax planning for the one-person company, might be suitable for you if it is your case. If it is not your case, you can talk to me privately, or you can raise the question and I would like to answer your question now. And I would like to remind you 2 things in here. From this tax year, if your business entitled with the VAT, you need to use the MTD to report your VAT return. And from the next tax year, if you are the sole trader or self-employed or anyone who need to report the self-assessment, you need to apply with a MTD scheme as well. all these new changes I talked today has already updated with our in-house accounting software, which now we provide it to our client for free. So you do not need to pay the accounting software as well. So if you have any inquiry of your business or you would like to understand more about our service, you could email me at yang@dnsaccountants.co.uk. Yeah, this is all today I would like to talk. And if you have any questions, I would like to help you, to answer it.